Welcome back to another content stream with DMGeezerjim. That's me. Hopefully you've been enjoying my reviews on the YouTube channel. Love to have your support. Obviously, you found me. Like, follow, subscribe, and share if you've been enjoying the videos. You can find some links on the lower part of the channel to help support us with support me on Patreon, pick up some of the products, the maps, and guides and small stuff that I put out on Etsy and DM's Guild. Follow on Facebook for just kind of some of my random thoughts and articles. But yeah, we're glad to have you here today. So, Planescape is what we're talking about today, and might be talking about it for quite a number of sessions, a number of chats. Planescape was a Dungeons and Dragons setting released in 1992, mainly pinned by Monty Cook. Basically, it is a multiversal concept for Dungeons and Dragons. There's always been the existence of the Outer Planes, the Abyss, the Hells, Mount Celestia, Limbo, so on and so forth. And to a greater or lesser extent, products had codified them a little bit, giving a dungeon master or referee a little bit of information to play with each of those, use them as campaign settings, use them for places for encounters. Every edition kind of came up with their own, what they call the cosmic wheel. And Planescape, every edition prior to Planescape, when Planescape came in, it kind of codified it. I believe that the overall idea was, we all had 2 or 3 different settings that we were playing with. You had Torment going on, you had Spelljammer, you had Kryn, you had Forgotten Realms, you had Mystara, you had the Flanius, Greyhawk setting, you had Domains of Dread. What was the Birthright campaign setting? I can't remember the name of the Birthright. And then you had dozens and dozens and dozens of people's homebrew worlds that are all floating around. Spelljammer was an attempt to tie them in, but almost kind of became its own game system rather than just a setting. And so Planescape followed up right around the same time. So Monty Cook and his team did there's a lot of creativity that goes into Planescape. We're not going to go a bunch into today we're just talking about the basic, what is it supposed to be, and kind of some high-level theories, some theory crafting about it that I think if you get your brain around it to begin with, then we can spend more time on actual products, actual sections, source books and modules and things like that. So, yeah. The Planescape was designed to be a playable representation of the cosmic wheel linked to the multiverse. The idea being that it didn't matter where your players came from. Once they got to the outer planes, once they got to Sigil, the material plane is insignificant. It was kind of a unifying place where everyone could play together. So that's the first thing to remember. It's a setting unto itself. It's designed to link in with other worlds, but mainly the idea, once you get to the Planescape area, once you get to the Outlands, once you get to Sigil, you don't really spend a lot of time going back to the material plane. If you do, it's short little jaunts or expeditions to grab this, do that, talk to this person, kill that, find this, and then come back in. And then come back, or then return out, I should say. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about one of the biggest things that I think is going to be the challenge for 5th edition. There is a large emphasis on powers. The term in 2nd edition Planescape was powers, to refer to deities, to refer to gods. Everything revolved around the powers, but the powers were also pretty detached from the situation. It's a unique thing to play around with. I mean, the idea is once you get to the outer planes, your players are literally in the shadows of gods and running around in the shadows of powers in their home planes, being adventurers. So there has to be an acknowledgement of powers. 5th edition has kind of gotten away from that in the extent that, when you're, for example, a paladin doesn't have to follow a deity. Their magic is divinely provided, but they're tenant to their belief, they're tenant to their specialization. They're an oath breaker. Their oath is what powers them. Even clerics, to an extent, were told that you don't necessarily have to have a deity. There's a large shift away from the existence and the dependence on gods, on powers, on deities in 5th edition. in most of the settings. Uh, your personal usage for your campaigns may be different. I'm still kind of a, if there's arcane magic, there's divine magic. Divine magic's got to come from somewhere. It comes from the deities, it comes from the powers, the divines. So yes, if you're a paladin, if you're a cleric in my campaigns, you got to have a deity. It's, that's not codified in 5th edition. Getting into Planescape, that's a huge, huge, huge deal. So again, this is kind of a little bit of high-level discussions about it. You have innumerable deities out there. You have all of the Mystara deities, all the Planescape or all the Forgotten Realms deities, a lot of the Greyhawk deity. It's not an exhaustive list, but also included a lot of your Babylonian mythology, Chinese mythology, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, all of your classical literature mythology, mythological gods and powers are represented on the outer wheel. And then you have your game deities as well. The 9 lords of hell, the lords of the abyss, the pantheon of Mount Celeste, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's founded in the idea of belief. Let's start with the powers. The powers basically only exist because of the belief of their followers. They gain their powers from belief. The more believers they have, the more petitioners they have, the stronger they are as a power. And so that's the first thing, that to an extent that you have to get your mind around the idea that this is a belief-powered universe. Does that mean everyone is a religious fanatic? No, not at all. Not at all. There's cults that believe in absolute nihilism. Those beliefs power the chaotic gods. The what's the best way to describe that? I mean, there's certain mechanisms given for the absolute complete disbelief of powers in existence, that they did that stance, that dogma, if you will, propels and powers a completely different pantheon from their lack of belief. And it's not only in belief, I believe they're the greatest. The simple belief in their existence is enough to power the vast majority of deities. Well, yeah, they're there, but for some that's enough, So that's the first thing you got to get around. Now that doesn't mean this is don't misunderstand. This is not a religious cult zealot filled. Everyone's got to belong to a church of this, that, or the other. Not at all. Not at all. It's more the understanding that the entire setting is taking place in the shadows of these ultra powerful beings, these powers that the players will really never be able to affect directly. So that's the first thing to kind of get your idea around, is it's a belief-centric, divinely powered universe. It's considered the cosmic wheel. The second thing to understand is you can adventure here from day one to, from level 1 out. Planescape was set up to be its own setting. You don't have to be a level 10 board of, I've killed everything within 100 miles of Luskan on board, let's go to the Outer Planes. It can do that, but it's not necessarily for that. In fact, I'm running a campaign, Sigil of Fate. We started at 3rd level. I have 2 of the players that are residents of Sigil. They're natives of the Outer Planes. They're planers. Then I have 2 people that have come in from the material plane, some primers, some clueless, depending on what you want to call them. So instantaneously, it's not a big deal to have a mixed party group. It puts a little bit of responsibility on your players to know the background of Sigil and a little bit. I mean, if you live here, you got to know a little bit about it, right? No different than any other backstory. If you're saying you're a 42-year-old retired teacher who left the school system of Waterdeep at retirement to find his own thing, you're going to know a lot about Waterdeep. And if that's your backstory, you as a player or the DM has an obligation to make sure that player fills that in. It's no different when Planescape. So, it's quite often the easiest thing is just to pull everyone from the material plane into Planescape and teach them all. But so you have the existence of powers, and powers being a very prevalent but almost untouchable aspect of the campaign world. So that's going to be interesting to see how 5th edition handles it. You've got lists of deities in 5th edition, but they don't really have the impact or even necessity of use that they've had in prior systems. So they'll be interesting to handle. I mean, it can be just handled with a hand wave, just transitive. Everyone believes in something, even if you don't believe in anything. that belief in nothing powers other things. It can be handled that simply. So it'll be interesting to see if that's still a given in the 5th edition thing. So the second thing to remember is the outer planes are very, very, very well populated, and they're not all immortals on the outer planes. In fact, we'll go through that real quick. You have mortals, which consist of planers, people that are born, live their lives, and die in the outer planes, and primers, people that come from Kryn, they come from Faerun, they come from Aber Torel, wherever they come from, your homebrew campaign setting. They step through a portal and they're in Sigil. They're a primer, but they're now in the outer plane, right? Those are considered mortal. And then you have all of the other things, creatures, animals, monsters that are born and have a normal life cycle in the outer planes. Even creatures that are born on the outer, we'll get to that here in a second. So you have the mortals, which encompass creatures from the inner planes and from the outer planes, whether they were born there, moved in, or whatever. Then you have what's called petitioners. So once a Burke, you'll see that term a lot as you look through the Planescape stuff, dies. Once a Burke bites it, once the Burke's put in the dead book, their soul travels forward. Now, Planescape, the first book will give you an extensive couple pages about the idea that when they're dead, they're gone. They've moved on. They have a little bit of a memory of who they were, but if they're a petitioner, they're something new. They still kind of look like what they were. They still have an identity of what they were, but the past is behind them. I think I remember that for some reason, I enjoy blacksmithing as an idea. I don't know why. He may have spent his whole life as a blacksmith making the finest weapons from Moradin in the worship of the dwarven god of Moradin, for example. So when he gets to Bytopia, when they get to Bytopia, they're now a petitioner. They've done their work. They're moving forward in the progress and in the support of their belief. That translates to a power or a deity in Planescape. We'll see what they use for 5th editions or D&D Next's translation of it. Point being, you're a petitioner. You're petitioning to some higher power at that point to join with the plane. And at that point, if you're a petitioner, that's 90% of the 95 to 99% of the followers. You've lived your life on your material plane. You've passed on naturally or otherwise. You've reformed in a new sense, as it were, as a petitioner on your home plane. It's like you're living a second life there, and you're doing whatever you're going to do. If you're a hell of a petitioner, like you're one of the best, you converted 1 million people, you brought the Church of Helm back into existence on the planet of Eberron that didn't even know who Helm was. You're going to die and you're going to come back and you're going to be a proxy. So that's your higher level beings, as it were. That's your avatars, or your avatars of a god. That's your solars, your greater beings, as it were. Not necessarily monster stat blocks. Proxies sat kind of on their own. A DM was instructed to make them as an NPC, as it were, separate and distinct from the creatures that then live on the plane, because that's the next step. If you went through your petitioner cycle, you went through your proxy cycle, you continue to do great works, guess what? You end your existence, and everything that is you is then absorbed into the plane, into Olympus, into Bytopia, into Acheron, into whatever aligned with your belief pattern and with your lifestyle. And at that point, you as an individual cease to exist anymore. You've become one with your belief. That person's belief is then diffused back into the plane and reborn as whatever it is. It's so brutal on the Abyss. When you die, whether you're a petitioner or not, you show up as a larva on the banks of the River Styx, according to this lore. They herd you off. Half of the souls get eaten then and there and don't even make any progress. The other half kind of get herded into the various places of the pit. If you show a huge level of maliciousness in the Abyss, for example, you become a petitioner by forming into a demon. What are you a petitioner of? Pure chaotic evil at that point. But so each of the outer planes has a somewhat distinct and different lifestyle, but the idea is the same. Everything is immortal. Mortal, not immortal. Everything is mortal. Once a mortal passes on, probably becomes a petitioner. If you're a special petitioner, then you become a proxy. Regardless if you're a petitioner or proxy, when you pass forward from that point, you're infused into the plane itself that supports your practice, and you become a bladeling, you become an archon, you become a freaking bone devil. Well, no, you won't start that high. You become a Nuparibo. But I digress. So that's the life cycle for a player character or for any person in the world of Planescape. That's how the outer planes themselves get populated. Here's another thing. There's nothing that is unkillable in the Planescape universe. There's nothing that is truly immortal. There's things that will not die by natural age, and that's most of your outer plane creatures do not age. Your Cardinals, for example, Tripicus, the talking bear who lives in Sigil. We minimize it by saying a talking bear. The very powerful, neutral, good, celestial power, who seems to be a talking bear, is fascinated and specializes in knowledge of the prime material plane. In Sigil, he runs around doing all of that stuff. He's immortal in the extent that he's not going to age. He's not going to die by natural means, but he can still be slain. Now, this is another catch that I don't know how they're going to true up. Whereas in 5th edition, and actually Planescape is the outlier here, when an extraplanar creature is slain anywhere in the universe except their home plane, this is standard D&D, slain anywhere except their home plane, they reform on their home plane. So that's why we always assume that, devils, demons, all that kind of stuff are immortal. You can kill them day and night, they're just going to reform on their home plane. If you destroy them on their home plane, they're gone, gosh, poof, gone. It's actually the reverse in Planescape. And it's interesting to manage, but I think it changes the whole dynamic to make it more balanced. If anything is slain away from its home plane, it's gone forevermore. That's why, when the demons fight their wars, they make sure to come in with overwhelming power. They know they're going to lose a lot of things forever if they invade Avernus. When the devils are fighting, they prefer to fight a defensive battle, draw the demons back to Avernus whenever they want. They're a little more organized. So when they lose their people, they're still going to have the essence reform within hell. So that's one of the big change. That's another big change. So the emphasis on belief, the reversal on the idea of immortal beings, extraplanar beings, living and dying. Those would be two interesting changes that that are genuinely opposite of how they work in 5th edition now. So it'll be interesting to see that. So you know what? We're listening to me talk a lot. Let's go to some visuals. So you've heard me mention the cosmic wheel. It differs in an extent for Planescape. We'll see how much of it comes over. 4th edition was pretty close. 4th edition had a high emphasis on the Shadowfell and the Feywild, but other than that, they were really consistent with Planescape. So if you have a chance to pick up the manual, if you're looking for a one-stop shop, the 4th edition Manual of the Planes is a good book. It's a good read, and it's actually pretty informative to at least get you within the 80 percentile of every other setting or edition's cosmic wheel idea. It's not all the way there for anyone, but it's pretty damn close for most of them. So hats off to the 4th edition book for that. So let's switch to a map here. I'm keeping an eye on my time. I don't want to go too darn long. Unlock will help. All right, let me switch to my other corner here. I'm sorry. There we go. So what we're looking at here is a drawing of the cosmic wheel at large. The outer planes, the astral plane, the ethereal plane, the prime material plane. It is kind of loading a little wonky. Sorry, it zoomed in here a little bit. So right now, for all intent and purposes, 99% of our players are here on the prime material plane. This is where Toril, Aber Toril, Oerth, Eberron, Wildmount, Ravnica, Theros, Jim's Super Campaign, Bob's World of Discord. This is where they all exist, okay? Prime Material Plane. And you can even see here where it says Crystal Spheres. So second edition was made in respect of the concept of the Spelljammer concept, that each system, each solar system, star system, planet even, depending on what you needed to do, was encased in a crystal sphere that protected it from everything else. The phlogiston moving between them that you could float along to get to the next crystal sphere. Otherwise, you were navigating the astral sea, astral plane, okay? So it's sticking with Prime Material Plane, as we all know it, being consistent there. Two of the differences that you'll have from current is the ethereal plane connects with the lower planes, inner planes. Inner planes are the building blocks of the universe. Air, earth, fire, water, as affected by the positive material plane and the negative material plane. Endless cycle of creation and destruction, absolute chaos. You can't say that an element in and of itself is good or evil, but you can always say they're chaotic from the simple fact they exist only to spread themselves. So the ethereal plane connects the inner planes with the prime material planes. This is the engine of creation and the engine of destruction at the same time. You have fire, and it takes it one step or several steps further, because you have the plane of ash, the positive energy and the negative energy, one that pushes forward, one that draws from. Where each of the four normal elemental planes border another plane, you have the quasi-elemental planes. For example, water and positive energy make steam. Air and positive energy make lightning. Earth and positive energy make mineral, like nothing but gems and jewels and ore and all of that. Fire and positive energy is radiance, radiant energy for your spells. Ash is negative in fire. Dust is negative in earth. Vacuum is negative in air. Salt is negative in water. So there's another the inner planes themselves are their own campaign worlds. You can go so abstract with some of the inner planes that it can make it difficult, but also interesting. So anyway, these things churn against themselves and within themselves to create the prime material plane under the guidance of the outer plane. The outer plane is the home of your powers, your gods, your deities, your petitioners, and everything else. They work in conjunction with each other. They are not connected to each other directly in any way, shape, or form other than the prime material plane or plane shift, portals, teleportation, that kind of a thing. There's no physical connection, physical being the term, between the inner and the outer. If you can go from astral to ethereal, you follow what I'm saying. It's a little bit kind of higher concept there. So this leads me to another thing that you're going to possibly struggle to get your mind around or help your players understand. The idea of limited infinite space and the idea of stacked infinite space to an extent. Man, what's the easiest way to describe it? Well, we'll do it right here at the ethereal planes, and then we'll duplicate it on the outlands. The concept is fire is an infinite plane of existence. You can go any which direction, up, down, left, X, Y, Z axis in the plane of fire, and you're always going to have fire. Eventually, the space of fire approaches near the space of earth. They don't ever actually interact. They don't ever actually touch because both are infinite, but you do have a border region. And within that border region, another infinite space of magma can form. I know it's kind of one of those things that you're either going to have to get really deep into freaking quantum science physics or just assume it and understand it and accept it. But yeah. So you're dealing with infinite areas stacked upon infinite areas that still border each other. Not an easy concept to get to. There's no fixed measurements in outside of the prime material plane. there are certain instances where, for example, Mechanus, looking at this thing number 1 here, let me zoom out a bit. We'll look at the cosmic wheel on the outer planes next. So there are 16 outer planes. They go Mechanus, Bitopia, I believe is number 2. Oh, Mechanus, Arcadia, Mount Celestia. Lawful neutral with good. Lawful good is Mount Celeste. Bitopia is neutral good, if that makes sense. Elysium is neutral good pure. The Beastlands is neutral with good tendencies. Arborea is well, actually they're kind of very similar. I'm sorry. We go from neutral good in Bitopia, neutral good with chaotic tendencies in Elysium, and then in 6 you're in chaotic good, and 7 you're chaotic good with I want to say evil tendencies, and then 8 is chaotic good with neutral tendencies. 8 is pure chaotic, same thing. Then you get to 9 is raw chaotic neutral, pure chaos. Not good, not evil, not malice, not just pure chaos. And then 10 you get into the chaotic neutral with evil, which would be, what am I looking at? 10 is Carceri? The Eternal Prison? I'm sorry, I'm looking for my number 10. Carceri is 10. 11 is the Abyss, chaotic evil for evil's sake. 12 is going to be the Grey Wastes. Yeah, 9 is Limbo, my apologies. 10 is Carceri, 11 is the Abyss. 12 is Carceri, my bad. What is 10? Sorry. I'm used to seeing it top down. It's messing with me here. Pandemonium. Yeah, chaotic neutral with evil tendency. Pure chaotic evil going towards neutral. Neutral evil is going to be 13, which is the Grey Wastes, Hades. 14, you get into Batar. No. 14 is I'm looking to Gehenna. The floating volcanoes. Duh, I should have looked at the picture. 15 is the 9 hells. 16 is a Charon, and then we get back to Mechanus. So you've got a circle of the Great Planes that represent the idealization, the manifestation in physical form of each alignment's power. Whether the gods are driven by the plane, or the plane is driven by the power, or the power drives the plane drives the power. That's conjecture. There's several other lore sources that you'll need to dig into to get to your in the beginning type of a phase. Okay, so quick tour of it. You had your prime material plane that's built by the engine of creation and destruction known as the inner planes, the elemental planes that are managed by the powers that sit upon the outer planes in their acts of creation and destruction. So, in brief, looking at it. So, while we got this open, we'll continue looking. This is out of the Planescape boxed setting. You can pick up the box setting for way too much money on eBay or Amazon. You can go pick up a digital copy for just a few bucks. If you're into stealing, you can probably figure that out yourself. It's on you. But this is a nice visual reference that we'll spend the rest of this little chat on. The cosmographical tables. This is going to tell you. I think this is telling you who's where. The name of each layer. The Abyss, infinite interchangeable layers and realms. Numbers only refer to the order in which they were cataloged by the governors. Okay, the Abyss is something we call it the 666 layers of. The truth of it is it's absolutely unknown. This gives you a little bit more of the terminology to go along with the upper picture. The Abyss is infinite. Acheron has 4 layers. It's connected with the river Styx to the Abyss. Arborea is connected to the river Oceanus and contain also next to Mount Olympus 3 layers. It tells you the Seelie Court, the Feywild Court, wanders around with and connects to Arborea. Mount Olympus, the Greek realm is separated into a couple different. So you have the plane, which is called Arborea. Then you have the layer, which is a layer within it, just as we had the 9 layers of hell. The good layers also, the good, neutral, and other planes also have their own layers. So Arborea, the great, what it is. You have one layer that's Olympus, and layer 2 that's Asa, and layer 3 that's Pelion, like a nighttime realm. Arcadia, 3 layers. 2 of them are absolutely unexplored. Bator, 9 layers. Hell. Real quick, I will do while we're talking grand scale. Planescape came out about the time that, towards the end of the Satanic Panic, the legendary time that was actually unfortunately real, and as part of the marketing push to get Dungeons and Dragons in a better light, they renamed a lot of their problematic stuff. The Abyss was fine. Hell was just too recognizable as what it was, so it became Bator. Baator. Demons became Tanari, and devils became Batizu. Daemons are what we all now know as Yugoloth, Daemon, kind of sitting in between the devil and the demon on the neutral scale. They are now called Yugoloths. They became Yugoloths here. They have been since then. Garoleths were another thing that was formed. Slotty have been around since the beginning of time. They weren't necessary to change. But yeah, devils, demons, and daemons became Bator, Batizu, Tanari, and Yugoloth. They're now devils, demons, and Yugoloths. So there you go. A little bit of lore is when you look through. If you get into some of the Planescape Classic content, a lot of the naming conventions are going to throw you because there was just considerations given to the perception of Dungeons and Dragons at this time. Likewise, the Mount Celestia used to be the 7 heavens, so they kind of went the same way as far as, okay, well, let's be religious neutral. We can't, the whole time that everyone was screaming about demons and hells and all of that, there was never any credence given to the fact that most of us were good guys fighting for the celestial powers in the heavens against all of the evil shit. It was media sensationalism exists no matter your freaking generation, no matter the time that you're in. There was never a cross reference given to how much mythology was here and how it was balanced and all of that. Anyway, so Mount Celestia, 7 heavens. The Outlands is a different thing on its own. We'll get to that. We might get to that here. I didn't want to go super long on this, but this is our intro, our strategic view of Planescape, so it might go long. So this product has some cool little art. It shows you pictures of some of the gate towns and some of the sites that you could see. Tony DiTerlizzi did the majority of the artwork for Planescape. It's awesome. DiTerlizzi. Hey, I'm saying it right. So here we get to the Outlands. This is kind of another little hub for players to goof around in. Actually, they'll spend probably more time if you run a Planescape campaign. There's the odds are they'll spend as much time in the Outlands as they will anywhere else. The Outlands is an infinite space. Even though space isn't infinite, it does have border areas. Get your brain around it however you want. The closer to, this is the connection point, this is the hub, this is the spindle, the axle, as it were, of the cosmic wheel. All of your outer planes connect to the Outlands in what are called gate towns. We'll zoom in just a wee little bit. What is a gate town? It's not like there's a shimmering wall where Outlands ends and Bytopia begins. You can keep walking and walking forever in the direction of Bytopia if you get past Trade Gate here. Because you're actually using a portal to go from Trade Gate to Bytopia. So the idea of infinite space is upheld here. If you go far enough out and then go to the right, eventually you'll come in and be able to come back around behind Ecstasy in Elysium. If you go far enough out on the wheel and continue walking around it, you can come back in at Hopeless, as it were, in the gate town for the Grey Wastes, Hades. So the idea of infinite space is there. And you as a dungeon master are instructed very much to not be consistent, to not have every gate town 100 miles off of the Great Spire. You have a responsibility to reflect it as infinite space. Plus side is, unless your players are doing something really dumb, at this point they have access to portals. They have access to ease of transport. A lot of portal travel. They'll be based in Sigil, the city of doors, potentially. A doorway to every place and every place to a door. So here in the Outlands, in and itself is a huge area. It's considered neutral ground even by the powers. The Great Spire itself, there's a little bitty thing, you can barely see it there. They didn't label it. That's considered the meeting place of the powers, the neutral grounds. This will get into a second level of, or not a second level. Let me rephrase that. A second consideration we'll touch on here in a second. I just want to finish with the brief geography overview. So each of these out here on this wheel are infinite in space. They go left, right, up, down, north. X, Y, and Z axes are infinite for every one of them. Especially in the case of like our Acheron, it's infinite, definitely fucking Z axis. Cubes tumbling through space forever. But eventually they all get to a point where they connect to, again, it's kind of hard to get your mind around, but for the purposes, let me try it like this way. For the purposes of everybody on layer 12, or layer 13, this one right in front of us, layer 13 goes all the way around the circle. There's nothing but layer 13 for layer 13. Layer 13 is the entire circle. Layer 13 extends out towards us, extends into and across and beyond. It is itself. But in context of the cosmic wheel, layer 13, i.e., I think we're at Gehenna, or the Grey Waste, excuse me. Nice looking place for the Grey Waste. The Grey Waste is next to Gehenna and next to the Abyss, or not the Abyss, Carceri. So, that's where your brain kind of gets around it. How can you be infinite, extending forever, and exist next to something? That's part of Planescape, man. That's part of the alien, the outer plane, the mystique that you, the DM, and you, the play groups, are going to have to struggle with. And that we'll see if they continue with that in 5th edition, or if they put some sort of everything in its own little box. I don't know. So anyway, each of those things connects to the Outlands via a gate town. The gate towns all point inwards towards the Great Spire. The Great Spire, again, is an infinitely high mountain, and atop the infinitely high mountain sits Sigil. So, yeah, you're getting all kinds of abstract thinking here. But again, I think if you can just take one step back and consider the vast majority of your travel is going to be done via portal, it's okay for the concept of infinite to exist when you don't actually have to manage moving through infinite space and time physically. So take, maybe you'll find yourself there. So if you're looking at the Outlands, you see all kinds of stuff. There's actually Ilsenine and Gizemnid. Those are the greater powers of Mind Flayer and Beholder, locked in their eternal war against each other near some of the other dwarven things. So even in the Outlands, you have the whole concept of the cosmic wheel, the whole concept of belief powering everything, infinite space, infinite age, and all of that. So when they go up or down the spire, they'll be in Sigil. Sigil is the city of doors. There's more useful maps for this city. It's one of the most... It's pretty hard to get your mind around. I guess it's called a torus, the inside of a donut. This picture right here is kind of the best. Not pretty, but very, very effective. The city is built on the inside of it. It's like you got a tire, man. And it's built exactly like this gigantic, huge cosmic tire. And the city is on the inside belt of the tire. And where the outside, where you'd mount it to the wheel, where there's just open space on the tire. And it's the same thing on the torus, on Sigil. So the city is wrapped around itself, as it were. If at any point the floor always seemed to curve up, if the whole concept of uphill both ways, yeah, that's Sigil, because you are going uphill both ways. No matter where you're at, you're walking up a hill. Whether you're walking up and down top spireward to top spireward to down spireward, or whether you're walking laterally around it for going ward to ward, you're always walking uphill in Sigil. You're never walking downhill. Water flows uphill and downhill in Sigil. You have what's called the ditch here that runs along through the hive. I have a campaign posted on the YouTube channel. You may or may not have seen it. Hey, Hugo, what's going on, man? Yes, welcome to the stream. We're just doing some Planescape chat. Exactly. The idea, rather than a right angle, it's a curved, interior curved thing. I'm gonna flip to my face screen here and see if I can't find a better view of it in my stuff. How are you doing today? Yeah. But yeah, Sigil is a important thing. You know what? I don't want to get into that. I want to continue on the overview of Sigil, or of Planescape. This is our first episode of really digging into it, so I don't want to go down too many odd tangents. So an additional cool thing about the Planescape box set is it gives you the powers, known deities, the powers by the plane, attaching each of the powers as they are to where they exist on the cosmic wheel. Which one of these planes, which layer on which plane do you find which deity? Now, this is an old product, 1990. 5th edition does not use many references to mythological deities. You'll see some accidental mentions once in a while. For example, I think most people know Set lives down on, the god Set, the Egyptian deity. Yep. Okay, that's interesting on your build up, yeah. So, but yeah, Set lives down on Hell. Most of us know that. This kind of codifies it. But yeah, you've got the Abyss that lists all of your greater demon lords, princes of the Abyss, Demogorgon, the Kiransali, Loth, Gronkul, the Great Mother for the Beholders, Hittokil, Dweeblix, Kali for Indian, Central Asian Indian mythologies represented on the cosmic wheel. Acheron has got Amatsu, Mikaboshi, Li Kung, Ilnaval of the Orcs, Grumsh, Bogtrue, Luthric, Nomog. Air has got the Gene Lords, that got Shu, the god of the sky for the Egyptian pantheon, is there. Arborea leans a little bit more into your Greek and Elven pantheon, so on and so forth. We could read every one of them, but I suggest you should go pick it up. Mechanus, what would be on a lawful neutral plane? Helm, the god from Toril. Horus, gods of justice, gods of balance, gods of pure law would reside on Mechanus. Mount Celeste is lawful good. Bahamut, we all think of Bahamut living up there. Mitra, Morden, Paladin from Kryn. Yes, this is Planescape 2nd edition. I'm just kind of doing a deep dive. Day one, what is Planescape? It's over on my YouTube channel. If you want to, once I'm done with it, I'll process it over there if you want to catch it up from the beginning. But yeah, I had updated my schedule. So Thursdays is Planescape days. Wednesdays is Forgotten Realms Day. Tuesday is Greyhawk and Mystara. Mondays just source books and modules. And Friday, I'm just going to do maps and talk DM and stuff. But it's Thursday, so we're doing Planescape. So one other thing, I'm just going to mention it because we're looking at the art. There's a heavy factional element that goes to Planescape that manifests itself in Sigil and beyond. Each one of your alignments, as it were, has an extreme manifestation of it in mortal belief and behavior. The Aethar believes of the Source, Bleak, Cabal, Doomguard. Each of these takes the alignment tendant and portrays it to an extreme. Pure lawfulness, the chaotic, even chaos, the Zausasex and versus the Bleak Cabal are on the same idea. I did update my schedule on Twitch page. I figured out how to do that. But they both have the idea of raw chaos and raw destruction, but one of them believes that we're here to enjoy it and help it happen. The other ones believe that entropy is kind of a natural process, and we're here to preserve the decay of the universe. If it goes too fast, it may not happen. If it goes too slow, man. So it's very interesting. The Dustmen are just about death, but they're not about murder. They're not about killing. They're about the natural process of death. Everyone is dead. We're here to honor the process of life. So it's an interesting level of what am I trying to say? Manifestation of the ideals of each plane in a physical way. And the party will be exposed to these, can be exposed to these as part of your experience in Planescape. If you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, if you're familiar with Ravnica, think of your houses there. It's kind of the same concept. House Boros, House the Simics, the Orzhov, Radko's Guild, etc., etc. And if you look at Ravnica, it's very similar to Sigil. I still say they stole Ravnica from Sigil, but that's just me. But yeah, the existence of the factions is similar to the existences of the houses in Ravnica, and they end up balancing each other out as you play through Sigil. So I'm going to finish up my recording here for episode 1 of Planescape. What is it? I'm still going to be running on Twitch for a little bit longer. But yeah, just a couple things to keep in mind. Planescape will be a 5th official Dungeons & Dragons setting and product, releasing, I believe, in December. I believe they've announced it for. Kind of existed in 2nd edition and it will exist in 5th edition to tie everything together, to give you a multiverse, whether it be you're using Kryn and Spelljammer and you want to tie it into this. And it may just, for some play groups, be its own setting, exploring the plane of Earth one day and running through the Beastlands the next day, and you wake up and you're trapped in one of the cubes of Acheron. You know, it's a universe, a multiverse for adventure. There are some deep concepts that you have to get your brain around, as far as the prevalence of powers, the prevalence of deities. 4th edition, 5th edition really kind of backshelf the idea of divine magic, the idea of gods and powers having any real impact. I mean, everything is challenging and destroying gods and powers in Forgotten Realms. It's hard to think of them as important when every third Forgotten Realms thing blows them all up, right? So, but I digress. That's one thing you have to get your eye around is the concept of belief. Belief can actually physically move planes. The gate towns sometimes chunks of the Outlands will disappear into its host plane on the border because for example, Bedlam, the gate town on the border of Limbo, just gets so absolutely chaotic that no matter what, it is now part of Limbo. So that section of it disappears, which brings you to the second heavy concept of Planescape. Limited, let me rephrase that, bordered immortality, bordered infinity. Every plane is considered infinite, yet every plane also has bordered areas. So you'll wrestle with that a little bit. But it's a great product. There's going to be a couple challenges that I could see 5th edition players or OneDnD and wizards that are going to wrestle with. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I'm going to go ahead and end my recording here. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Follow it. This is just the first in a long series as we dig into Planescape, get into the details of it, see what's cool about it, and see what'll work for 5th edition. But like, follow, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. Share it with some friends if you think they might have some fun with it. Check my follow page, and you'll find links to Etsy, Facebook, Patreon, and Twitch there. It's been fun. Y'all be safe.